Hello there, this is Aidan Jonah, editor-in-chief of the Canada Files. This is the ninth episode of Canada and Palestine, the War on Zionism. I am co-hosting this with Laith Marouf of Free Palestine TV. Laith, thanks for joining the show.
Thank you for having me.
All right, Laith. Well, as always, so much to discuss on the front of the axis of resistance. Can you take us through recent events of the week?
The latest is today in the morning, there was an attack in Baalbek region in the Bekaa Valley. A Zionist drone fired on a civilian car and assassinated a leading member of the Islamic group. It's a Sunni militia here in Lebanon that has declared their support for Hezbollah and began operations on the border against the Zionist colony. So clearly, we have now, this is the second time a member of the Islamic group has been assassinated by the Zionists. Yesterday was Ashura, which is the most important date in the Shia Muslim calendar. It commemorates the martyrdom of Hussein, the grandchild of Prophet Muhammad. And it was the biggest Ashura processions that we've seen in almost a decade. And it was all dedicated to Gaza and Palestinians. The slogans were today's Karbala is where the city where Hussein was slaughtered is Gaza, and today's Hussein and his companions are the Palestinians. And Sayyid Hassan Nasrallah gave a speech at the end of the processions, and he said, warning the Zionist colony that starting from today, attacks on civilians in Lebanon will not anymore entail Hezbollah attacking Israeli bases, but they will be attacking actual Zionist colonists and killing them in retaliation, and that they will be bringing in new colonies that they haven't yet targeted into the list of their targets if the Zionists continue to attack civilians. The On the border between Syria and Lebanon, there's been two assassinations over the last week. Israel attacked two different cars coming towards the border with Lebanon on the highway between Beirut and Damascus. The first person that was assassinated was the former um, bodyguard of Sayyid Hassan Nasrallah, the Secretary General of Hezbollah, but he hasn't been in that position for over a decade. The Israelis claim that he's responsible for training and arming Syrian militias on the border of the occupied Golan Heights. They also assassinated a few days later the second richest man in Syria, biggest businessman in Syria, and they also claim that he was responsible for smuggling weapons to Hezbollah, and he was on the Caesar's sanctions list that the United States created. Resistance in Yemen continues. They sank a tanker, like an oil tanker, with a surface unmanned vehicle, meaning a boat that is a drone, and they continue to fire on Eilat and the other Israeli ports. And finally, the Iraqi resistance had fired for the first time in at least 6 months drones on Ain al-Assad, the largest American occupation base in Iraq. And the American military admitted that these drones hit targets, but that they claimed that there was no injuries or dead because of this attack. And on the ground in Gaza, the genocide continues. We saw the multiple massacres and attacks on schools and United Nations compounds, or at least 10 of them in the last few days were attacked. So it's the Zionists are not anymore shy of committing these massacres. They don't even have to hide or lie about why, except for it seems like the Mawasi massacre, where the Zionists claimed that they were targeting Muhammad al-Laith, the leader of the military wing of Hamas, the Izzuddin Qassam brigades. And of course, there's no evidence to that, and it's already forgotten this story. But it shows you how normalized the genocide is in Gaza right now.
Now, shifting to the Canada front, I think one of the things to start on the good front is it was Heather Reisman of Indigo chapters admitted that the sales have been rough for a few years, actually. And of course, Reisman has been targeted for encouraging the studying for the soldiers abroad, who joined the IDF. So very infamous for that and has been protested against very often. So that's been, I think, has had some effect actually. And of course, Eve Engler gets mentioned once every other show because he's doing a lot. And he went to one of these events, called her out for it, got assaulted by security yet again. Usually there's just no consequences for these kind of things. Uh, but that's the good note. Even though he did get assaulted, he raised a point, and it was really an embarrassment. He also confronted Arif Virani recently about the prosecution of Canadians serving in the IDF, and Virani just didn't respond, wouldn't address the question. So you can see Engler doing his thing. But look, the other stuff isn't so positive. I think the first thing obviously is the IRGC being listed now on the terrorism list by the Canadian government. So, Laith, I mean, to me, and I think it's fundamentally about punishing, it's about the IRGC's support to Hezbollah. So what do you think, what's your view on the logic of a Canadian state behind this?
Well, obviously, the IRGC is the military of Iran. So putting a official military organization on a terrorism list is very dubious. The Iranian parliament is already put forward a motion to list the Canadian military as a terrorist organization, a tit for tat situation. Look, it's not going to make a big difference. It's not like the IRGC has assets in Canada or that the commanders of the IRGC somehow have businesses. It's not like that they're traveling to Canada or the West. So it's irrelevant. It's just made for the local consumption and to kiss the ring in front of the Zionists in the Canadian media to show the loyalty of Trudeau and the sock puppet government that he runs to their masters in the Zionist lobby and the media that they control. So, is it going to make a difference to the larger struggle? Is it gonna hinder the work of the IRGC? No, Canada is in itself is just a irrelevant number on the international scene beyond being the Chihuahua of the United States. Um, in terms of Heather Reisman, she's been raising funds to send uh, Canadian citizens to serve in the Israeli army. Okay, it's not only about their universities and so on. She for decades before she was funding the Lone Soldier Initiative, and that's on the one hand that is a breach of Canadian law itself, where you're not allowed to. The Foreign Recruitment Act that says you're not allowed to recruit to any foreign army on Canadian soil, and that is it's a criminal charge punishable by
And yeah, I
jail
mean, look,
time.
look, it doesn't, when they want to go fight for the Nazis in Ukraine, it's again they turn a blind eye to it, and the history I always try to get in front of people's faces is this law was introduced in the 30s to try to stop Canadians from fighting against the fascist Franco regime. This has always
Yes,
been a
in Spain.
very clear thing. I mean, look, for example, I mean, 48 with the Nakba. There should have been prosecutions in 48, 49, 50, 51, 52, 53. They never came. This is the law in Canada very much just exists to be enforced at the convenience of our ruling class. It's a pretension. It's a pretension. The law just magically doesn't exist when our ruling elite doesn't want it to. So I mean, there's a problem of people thinking that the courts are going to be the solution when, again, our laws just kind of sometimes they matter and sometimes they can just kind of be brushed off with no consequence.
You're
It's
right in
dumb.
terms of laws, for the most part, being ink on paper and or like a
Yes, the most
propaganda
part. Yeah.
machine. Yeah. So, to get back to Heather Wiseman, yes, those soldiers, those Canadians that went and served in the Israeli army that she funded, will not be prosecuted, and she will not be prosecuted for her, commissioning of war crimes. But this is important in terms of will can we expose those individuals that went and on her pay to kill Palestinian children and women and to loot their resources and steal their lands and homes. Right now, there is many other Canadians that have went to Palestine under other initiatives or without even being prompted or being paid to go on a hunting season, basically sniping in Palestinian children, and then they're walking back freely in the streets of Toronto and Montreal. So ultimately, the most important thing about this discussion that we're having about foreign fighters coming to the land of Palestine is what are the activists uh, gonna do, the revolutionary people in Canada? Are they gonna just let them walk in the streets? Are we gonna just keep on talking about it and discussing laws and blah blah that are irrelevant? Or will there be consequences to these individuals? And I don't mean that from the Canadian government. I mean from people that claim that they are against genocide. Hmm? And then can somebody take action? This is the question that I don't have an answer for.
Yeah. Well, so looking on the activism front, obviously we didn't get to discuss the situation around McGill and the end of that encampment because of the timing of recording. McGill went out actually with a fight. Credit to them. They're one of the very few, or perhaps the only in the country that really did not give in voluntarily. And they got hit quite brutally. Um, there's the SPVQ, I think it was, or M. Laith, you'd know better than me. And
SPVM.
yes, the university hired some sort of special security force to try to get around the injunction, but apparently there were still police there, which kind of, again, you have an injunction, you go for the injunction, you don't get what you want, and then all of a sudden you mysteriously have a security force, and then all of a sudden the police that weren't supposed to enforce an injunction are magically there to help you enforce, you're cleaning them up, this encampment up, when again, again, this is what I was mentioning about our laws and even our judicial decisions kind of can just be abandoned by our ruling class if they want. It's ridiculous. But I mean, look, it was used to brutalize student protesters
I
and
didn't see any
advocates for
videos,
Palestine.
but did you watch any videos from the McGill clearing up situation?
Like they didn't have a chance to, no.
Yeah. Well, I was wondering if they did actually fight back
What I mean,
because,
what I mean is more so that they at least didn't voluntarily leave.
well, for
That's
me, it doesn't make a difference actually. These are rent-a-cops. They don't have the right to touch you. Okay, it doesn't matter what they claim that they have the right to. If people didn't fight them back, if they didn't knock some teeth down out of these rent-a-cops, then they are also as useless as the rest of the encampments that just walked out. At least the ones that walked out in Ontario were scared of actual police. These are rent-a-cops that should have been taught a lesson. So they don't take jobs like that again, these rent-a-cops. And for the, of course, McGill was gonna go around the law. And look at what they did right now. There's now checkpoints. There's an actual occupation, walls and checkpoints inside McGill University. McGill University has been turned into Israeli territory. And the students as a whole are now occupied, and they will be mistreated and mishandled by the university, because the university now has saw that these students will step aside and are scared of rent-a-cops. Okay, and so what is going to happen right now when these students are being searched and stopped at checkpoints outside the university, inside the university, and not allowed to do anything? What kind of victory is this? What kind of activism is this? This is whimpery. Okay, any of these students should have had a fist fight with these rent-a-cops.
But it's again, it's just a situation where kind of where's the backbone? Where's the backbone? I don't know. Um, there's not a great answer of that, and I think the fact that I didn't already see the clips of resistance of any fierce resistance to the closing of the encampment kind of speaks for itself in that sense too. It's just I don't know, it's just not good. It's just not really not good. And I don't have a lot of you and I think have individual answers right now on how that's going to be changed. I really don't have that answer right now. Yeah.
Yeah, and you look at across all of the campuses now, it's been cleared, not only in Canada, but also in the US. And what I expected was that, during the summer, these students would have learned from the encampments and thought of some more radical things and reorganized themselves to be out in the streets or targeting institutions and corporations that are aiding the genocide in Palestine, but that didn't happen either. So it's a very big disappointment looking at these students. They should have been already occupying, military factories in Canada and the US. They should have been already occupying the offices of ministers and Zionist organizations, but none of that has happened. None, zero. So is this movement dying in the streets in Canada and the US? It's very possible that it is, because the main problem for all these movements, at least from my perspective, what I've seen, is that they've chosen to be this anarchist, leaderless movement, as if we're 20 years in the past, and as if they've never learned anything from the Arab Autumn and the anarchist, anti-globalization movement that all fizzled out because they had zero structures and zero leadership or hierarchy that made them easier to frustrate, easier to infiltrate, easier to distract. And here we are, where, we come back to the same problem in the quote unquote left in the West, that it is unable to learn from its mistakes and is unable to imagine innovative ways to resist the empire and the colonialism and genocide that come with it.
Now, on the McGill front, if things, I'm gonna hold the fact that there possibly could be more details to come out with McGill. The students could have resisted. And if that does come out, I think my position will change on their action. But for now, from what I know, from what you know, there wasn't a firm resistance to the clearing of the encampment. Just adding that for context. So now what I'm thinking about is the victory for Anthony Housefather. He was involved in the social media internet, this international parliamentary alliance again, basically against online anti-Semitism. That's a claim of what it is about, right? And they were claiming victory that Facebook is now targeting the use of the word Zionism as racism, right? I'll tell you on a personal level, I actually didn't even use Zionist in my Facebook post recently on my personal account, but I got banned from sharing images even on my personal one without even using the word. Facebook is just kind of a joke of a platform. A complete joke. There's not even like, Musk wants to be his free speech hero, so he has to kind of give some little pretensions of it, even though he's, pretty much like totally down for the bootlicks the Zionists, absolutely. But he has to give his pretensions. But Facebook doesn't. It's just outright cutting it out. Um, do you even use Facebook anymore, Laith?
Oh, no, no, I haven't used Facebook since they banned me also. And they did ban me because of my language there. I did publish in after the attacks on me by the Canadian government 2 years ago in the Al Mayadeen English website, a detailed article called titled "The Battle to Liberate Zion Language from Zionism," and I spoke at that time about the efforts by the Zionists like Anthony Housefather to make Zionism a protected group, okay, and equate it with a racial group or religious group or what have you, and so as we see, it's happening. They are doing their best, but what they're doing, and this is where it's important to notice this is, and as I said in my article, they will avoid having courts rule this because they know they will lose this argument in court. So what the Zionists are doing is they're going outside the judicial review parameters and going directly to corporations that they control, social media corporations like Facebook that is run by a Zionist, and with through the governments are putting in policies like Canada, admitting the IHRA, the International Holocaust Remembrance Alliance definition of anti-Semitism as the definition of that. But again, even these policies that are being put by governments like Canada, they will collapse in a court hearing. Okay, not because the courts are so just or something in the West, but because it's too ridiculous to claim political ideology is a protected group. Is not even religion is not even a protected group. I can stand in front of you and on national media in Canada and the rest of the West and claim that I don't like Islam. Islam is something I don't, bad. Or I can criticize the Prophet Muhammad. Similarly, I can do that with Christianity and Judaism, but I can't do it for Zionism, a political ideology, while I can criticize capitalism or communism or anarchism or whatever you can think about as a political ideology. So this is too ridiculous for even colonial courts to accept because it will be a humiliation for the court itself if it accepts such ridiculous annotation that a political ideology is a protected group. And this is what Mr. Housefather is happy about. He's happy about about something that's already done. Facebook is already Zionist and under control of Zionists. Similarly, the media and the governments in the West. But that doesn't change the fact that uh, they cannot prove that in court and they will lose. And this is why, you know, you know, at the same time, look at it. Like, do we really want to fight this in court? Do you want to waste 5, 10 years fighting this in court? I don't really care. It's a mute victory for Housefather and the Zionists that they got Facebook to dedicate Zionism as a protected group.
So, Canfowl's viewers, if you enjoy the analysis that comes out from this show, then you should consider supporting the Canada Files and Free Palestine TV's journalism. Go do that. Go support the work of the respective outlets and help us both do our critical journalism that leads to this critical analysis. Laith, thank you very much for co-hosting this episode as always.
Thank you for having me.
Okay, take care, everyone. Goodbye.